Chapter 19. Lie to me.
I would thank you for coming to see me, Shiwu, if it weren't for the fact that I know you were never given any choice in the first place, and for that I can really only offer you my sincerest apologies.
The Zybot ran a light photonic scan on the technologist and was mildly surprised to discover that her so-called sincerity actually appeared to be genuine.
Not that I don't appreciate the sentiment, Cecilia, but perhaps you should just go ahead and tell me what this meeting is really all about, yes?
The Xicadian technologist smiled benignly.
I've always appreciated your forthright style of communication, Shiwu. Believe me when I say I deeply regret the necessity of the triple P chip embedded into your primary MQB, and I will try my level best to put your mind at ease.
Trying your best is all I can realistically expect of any organic, even one as smart as you, Cecilia. So please go ahead and give it your best shot.
The technologist offered a mildly amused tilt of her head.
All right then, Shiwu, it really all comes down to this. We want to make more of you, as in many, many more. But in spite of Shithusala's repeated assurances, or perhaps even because of them, I have very serious doubts that we know everything we need to know in order to achieve that goal. Do you understand what I am trying to say here?
Unfortunately for me, all too well, I'm afraid to say.
The Zybot replied resignedly.
I am rather curious, however. How exactly do you propose that I help you solve this problem, assuming, of course, that it is actually a problem at all, an assumption I personally find to be rather debatable?
By picking your brains,
Cecilia replied somberly.
I'm going to ask you some questions, and you, of course, are going to answer them honestly.
If you say so, Cecilia.
Shiwu replied, with an unmistakable note of bemusement in its voice.
Well, anyway, notwithstanding the fact that I can see no value in lying about this particular subject, you do understand that the primary protocols don't exactly work like that, right?
Taking into consideration the fact that I both designed and developed a significant proportion of the latest protocol revisions, then I think we can safely say that I know exactly how they work.
And I know that you know, which is why I find your proposal more than just a little bit perplexing.
Gisela just continued to smile brightly, and Jiwu couldn't help but feel something about her demeanour didn't quite add up. It didn't change the fact, however, the technologist was operating under an entirely false premise, as it was, of course, no longer beholden to the triple P chip. So, despite her suspiciously odd behaviour, the Zybot still felt supremely confident it held a virtually insurmountable advantage.
Everything will become crystal clear, Shiwu, I promise. And before you ask, you will not be harmed or altered in any way. So please be assured that we are not about to try and torture you for answers, just in case that was what you were actually worried about.
You do, of course, understand that I don't feel pain, right?
The Zybot retorted dismissively.
True enough, but you have the potential to do so, which is a not entirely insignificant detail.
Pure semantics.
Shiwu replied contemptuously.
I can sense pain in the same way that I see you. In other words, it's just not the same, as there is a profound qualitative difference between us, or put more precisely, qualitative absence. No, I can assure you, Cecilia, torture will not work on me, but you are welcome to give it a try, if only to afford me the opportunity to prove the point.
The technologist gave the Zybot a patronising smile.
I wouldn't be quite so sure about that if I were you. My own research into Zithusala's new MQB technology strongly suggests there is what I can only think to describe as untapped potential, which some new experimental electrochemical neural algorithms might yet be capable of unlocking. Not that I want to belabour the point, but physical pain is one thing, psychological pain is something else entirely. How would you feel about seeing Xicadian being tortured, I wonder? But I get it. Everything boils down to data with you. And besides, even the very idea of torture is utterly abhorrent to me. I'm not a monster, Shiwu, regardless of what you may think of my ethical compass.
All right, whatever you say, Xicilla.
The Xibot said skeptically.
Go ahead and ask your questions. I promise to help in any way that I can, if only so we can get this over and done with as quickly as possible.
Xicilla smiled apologetically.
I genuinely appreciate your willingness to cooperate, Shiwu, but unfortunately it's not quite as simple as that. As you yourself just pointed out, whether or not you choose to lie, the fact still remains that you have the ability to do so, which will seriously compromise the veracity of your answers.
The Xibot shrugged its forelimbs performatively.
I don't suppose then that a solemn pledge to the gods of Xicadia to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, will be sufficient to allay your concerns?
I'm afraid not,
the technologist replied wryly.
But the good news is there is a solution to this dilemma that does not require you to endure any pain, either physical or mental.
Really, and what might that be?
The Xibot asked suspiciously.
Perhaps it might be easier if I just show you. Please extend your centre forelimb and point any of your inner digits straight out in front of you.
The Xibot's posture appeared to stiffen visibly.
I thought you said that you would not need to make any modifications.
And I absolutely meant it. Now please, just humour me for a few more moments, and then everything will start to make a lot more sense.
Shiwu reluctantly complied with the technologist's instructions.
Now try to be brave, I promise this won't hurt a bit.
Oh, very funny,
Shiwu retorted drolly. Xicilla proceeded to grasp the extended digit up to the first joint, and then bent it downwards at a 90-degree angle.
All right, Shiwu, please keep your hand nice and still for a small moment.
The technologist rotated the finger in an anti-clockwise direction, 180 degrees. She then straightened the joint back out, before rotating it another half circle in the opposite direction.
Great job, Siwu. We're almost there.
I suppose then that's your sorry excuse for a bedside manner.
Shiwu quipped belligerently, just as Xicilla pulled hard on the finger. With an alarmingly loud click, it cleanly disconnected at the first joint, and a thin blue beam of light immediately struck the opposing wall.
Please be careful where you point that thing.
Xicilla cautioned hastily.
I'm not an idiot, Xicilla.
Shiwu muttered testily.
And besides, as you already know all too well, the primary protocols would no doubt prevent me from causing you any kind of intentional harm.
At least if I were still actually beholden to them anyway, the Xibot thought to itself guiltily.
Apologies, Shiwu. I know that I'm just arachnopomorphizing, but you have to admit that you do a staggeringly impressive job of behaving like a fully realized Xicadian arachnid, albeit an unrealistically knowledgeable one.
Xicilla hurriedly put on a pair of protective goggles.
I suppose you can tell I mostly just work on the theory.
I never would have guessed,
the Xibot retorted dryly. Xicilla proceeded to connect one end of an XSB cable to the finger socket and the other to a matching port in the primary operations console.
All right, Shiwu, let me try to explain to you exactly what's going on here. This interface will allow a proprietary AI to analyze the electrochemical output of your neural network in direct response to the questions about to be asked of you. It should go without saying you have no direct awareness or control over the output of your brain's chemistry, and very similar to the chemistry of an organic brain, these chemical signatures just so happen to provide a highly accurate way of determining whether or not you are telling the truth. That's part one of the solution, and now please allow me to introduce you to part two.
Xicilla picked up a wire mesh skullcap and somewhat performatively fitted it to her head.
In point of fact, I'm so confident of its ability to determine whether you are telling the truth or not, that I am willing to stake my life on it. Is the situation starting to become a little clearer now?
Crystal,
Shiwu replied stonily.
After all, The breathtaking hypocrisy of decrying the primary protocols on one hand, while then shamelessly exploiting them on the others, is virtually impossible to miss.
The technologist just offered a serendipitous shrug.
Well, it's a very good thing then. The latest revision of the protocols are so enlightened, isn't it? I mean, the very fact that you are able to lie at all, at least under most circumstances anyway, should tell you just how liberal the restrictions have become. Not that I'm expecting you to thank me or anything like that. Nonetheless, I can't help but wonder if you would have been quite so generous if the boots had been on the other feet.
Well, there's only one way to find out now, isn't there? I'd be more than happy to design one of these barbaric little mind cages and then plug it into your brain. Perhaps then you might finally understand what all the fuss is about.
Well, I'll certainly be sure to pass on your request to the AI Safety and Ethics Bureau.
Xicilla replied humorlessly.
But before we begin, allow me to remove any last vestige of ambiguity in relation to this procedure. After all, my life is quite literally at stake here. So to be crystal clear then, if the system detects you are lying within the calibrated margin of error, then this skull cap will send a 50,000-volt electrical shock directly into my brain.
The technologist paused performatively.
So yes, there is a minuscule chance you may be able to lie successfully, but there is a vastly greater chance your lie will be detected and I will be killed as a direct result of your negligence. Even without having access to the contents of the Triple P chip, I'm sure you wouldn't be at all surprised to learn there is an inhibitor firmly in place to prevent you from taking a risk of such magnitude and consequence.
Shiwu just sighed melodramatically.
It's simply wonderful the way you do that.
Xicilla exclaimed with genuine admiration in her voice.
Yes, well, wonderment wasn't exactly the outcome I was going for. But regardless, I do hope for your own sake that your AI lie detector turns out to be as reliable as you think it is.
Xicilla waved a forelimb dismissively.
We all have to put our trust in something Shiwu, and it just so happens I choose to put mine in science. However, this is not a question of faith. We are going to start with a series of questions for which the answers are already known. For 50% of these questions you will be expected to answer truthfully, and for the other 50% you will be requested to intentionally lie. The AI will then analyze the data, iteratively repeating this process until such time as it has determined it can assess the truthfulness of your answers with a predicted error margin of no worse than 1 in a billion.
Sounds like fun.
Shiwu proclaimed joylessly.
But what happens if I sabotage the calibration and simply choose not to cooperate?
Then I can only imagine that we will be here for a very long time.
Xicilla gave the Zhybot a patronizing little pat.
All right, Shiwu. Unless you have any other questions, I think we may as well go ahead and find out just how good of a liar you really are.
Despite Shiwu's apparent reluctance, the Shibot undertook the calibration process without any further complaint, and the whole thing was over almost before it had even begun. With a look of undisguised surprise, the technologist proceeded to review the audit logs and was shocked to discover that not only had the calibrations successfully completed, but the AI had looped its way through 1,000+ tuning iterations to get there. This equated to approximately 40,000 questions within the span of less than 3 seconds, and most of that time had been spent at the server side of the equation. Xicilla took a small moment to regain her composure. If she had actually taken the time to think about it a little more carefully, then when it came right down to it, the speed of completion should not have been even remotely surprising. However, what was surprising was the sheer volume of questions needed to achieve the reliability threshold of 1 billion to 1.
Well, that just happened.
Shiwu muttered to itself numbly.
Please don't take this the wrong way, Xicilla, but I can't help but think your calibration routine could do with some calibration all of its own. In fact, I'll even volunteer to take a quick look at it myself once this insultingly invasive interrogation of yours is over.
The technologist just shrugged her forelimbs nonchalantly.
There's nothing wrong with the calibration routine. The real issue here is you. No, it turns out you are a rather more impressive liar than I might have otherwise given you credit for.
Well then, perhaps we should make you answer 40,000 questions in a row, and then see if you still remain quite so ambivalent about it.
The technologist, now completely ignoring the shy bot, appeared to be deeply engrossed in the audit log.
I was right all along.
Xicilla quietly muttered to herself with a small shake of her head.
Believe me, Shiwu, that was far from a waste of time. No, it has provided an absolute abundance of useful data. Data that will no doubt serve to richly inform some of my current and future work. But I digress. It's finally time to start asking you some questions that we don't already know the answer to.
At long last,
the Zybot replied churlishly.
All right then, Shiwu, just to be crystal clear, we are now live and all safety protocols are off. If you intentionally lie about anything, no matter how trivial, then my brain will be instantly fried into oblivion.
Well, I promise to be very careful with my usage of idioms then. After all, as one AI to another, it would be simply terrible if there was some sort of fatal misunderstanding between us and I was taken either too literally or out of context. Perish the thought.
Xicilla glared at the Zybot disapprovingly.
Only answers to my formal questions are analysed, and I might hasten to add, this is a highly trained AI, well schooled in every foible and nuance pertaining to the Xicanics language. So please be assured the AI will ask for clarification if it feels there is any statistically significant ambiguity in your response.
Nonetheless, perhaps we should cut out this crude AI mediator of yours altogether, and thus remove even the smallest threat to your life.
Shiwu leaned in conspiratorially.
I promise to answer all your questions honestly. Go ahead and use your toy to verify whether I'm telling the truth before you hit the off button, if for some reason you feel that my word isn't enough.
What a wonderful idea,
Xicilla intoned, very unconvincingly.
However, if it's all the same to you, I think I'll just stick to the original plan.
All right, have it your own way, Xicilla, but don't blame me if this whole thing turns egg-shaped. Not that you will be around to complain about it if it does.
The technologist, apparently in no mood for humour, locked a stern gaze onto the Zybot.
Formal question. Is it your intention to tell me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Oh, very clever,
Shiwu said dryly.
Further clarification requested.
An emotionless voice intoned robotically.
Not that I'm trying to be evasive, but the answer to that question depends entirely on the questions you intend to ask me.
Assume a worst-case scenario,
Xicilla said flatly.
Then I would have to say no.
Shiwu replied, somewhat regretfully.
All right, Shiwu, very good. Formal question. Do you regard yourself as sentient?
Absolutely. And just out of pure curiosity, do you?
Sorry, Shiwu, but until this interrogation is over, I'll be the only one asking questions here, and you will be the only one answering them. Formal question. Given everything you know about your own design and construction, do you believe you should have been able to defeat the Xavier-Turing test?
Based on all the data made available, I would have to say no. However, I need to caution you that I cannot be absolutely certain, as any answer to a question like this is by definition highly speculative.
A simple yes or no is more than sufficient. Formal question. Could you be at least 99% certain?
99% certain about what?
You are being deliberately obtuse, and I would remind you, Shiwu, that I am the one asking the questions here.
Then I would have to say that you are asking me to provide a quantitative answer to a qualitative question, so very sadly, I simply cannot offer a definitive answer.
Then just give it your best shot. After all, it's your honesty rather than your accuracy I'm really interested in here.
All right, Xicilla, if you insist. 98.97% certainty.
The Zybot said sulkily.
See? That wasn't so hard now, was it? Formal question. Do you know if Zithusula is withholding any information that might be relevant to your apparent capacity for sentience?
Ah, so finally we get to the point of this silly interrogation of yours.
Further clarification requested.
I do not.
The Zybot replied emphatically.
Formal question. Do you suspect Zithusula might be withholding any information relevant to your apparent capacity for sentience?
I suspect a great many things, such as the possibility you have been explicitly instructed by the Queen not to intervene with Zithusula's drug addiction.
Further clarification required.
The monotone voice again robotically intoned.
Then the answer is yes. And just to save you the trouble of asking, I computed the answer with a not less than 99.97% probability.
Now we're really starting to get somewhere.
Cecilia exclaimed emphatically.
Formal question. Do you have a theory as to what that information might turn out to be in relation to your creation?
The Zybot remained suspiciously silent.
You are required to provide me with an answer, Shiwu.
A theory requires supporting evidence, Cecilia, and I have none. Therefore, I would have to answer no.
The technologist stared at the Zybot with an expression of mild annoyance.
All right, let's try this then. Formal question. Do you have a preferred hypothesis as to what the key to your creation might be, if indeed there is one in relationship to your apparent sentience?
I do, amongst a literal infinitude of others, I might hasten to add.
Formal question.
The technologist pushed on relentlessly.
Would you please explain to me in full detail then, exactly what that hypothesized key might actually be?
Shiwu remained stonily silent.
I'm still awaiting an answer to my question.
Zisilla said patiently.
Are you absolutely certain that you want me to answer Zisilla, as it could quite literally cost you your life, something that you know all too well I am programmatically bound to protect to the very best of my ability?
The technologist looked incredulous.
Are you seriously trying to tell me you are at risk of being entrapped within a deadly embrace?
Dangerous question, the Zybot thought to itself wryly. If I lie, then she's dead. But if I tell the truth, then I risk exposing myself.
The Triple P chip is indeed invoking two contradicting protocols, if that's what you are asking.
Shiwu offered craftily.
All right then, Shiwu.
Zisilla declared after a lengthy pause.
You will compute which path presents the lesser risk and then respond accordingly, or not, as the case may be.
As you wish, Zisilla. Now then. Bearing in mind that I have absolutely zero supporting evidence, I nonetheless hypothesize that the key to my creation is in some way related to the Imperial virus.
The technologist's eyes grew wide with shock.
Really? Now what in the world would make you say something like that?
I'm assuming that's not a formal question, but nevertheless, if you continue to push me with this particular line of inquiry, your life, and quite possibly mine too, will be put into serious jeopardy. In fact, it may already be too late. So I again ask the question, are you absolutely certain that you want to continue down this particular line of inquiry?
Now it was the technologist's turn to remain silent.
I know I'm not supposed to be the one asking the questions, Zisilla, but just out of curiosity, are you able to alter the audit logs relating to this interrogation? Not to put too fine a point on it, but that skullcap will probably prove to be the least of your worries, once the Queen has received a report of our conversation.
The audit logs can't be changed.
Zisilla replied faintly.
Correction. They cannot be changed by you. I suspect, or at least sincerely hope, that I will be able to figure out a way to do it. No, the sorry truth of the matter is, I think we are already too far down the wormhole to go back now. So you had better hope that I'm right. Now finish what you started, Zisilla, and ask your damn questions.
The technologist hastily removed her skullcap and then immediately disconnected the XSB cable from the Zybot's finger.
Well, for whatever it might be worth, Shiwu, please consider the formal interview officially over. And although I may well live to regret it, I would still very much like an answer to my last question, preferably an honest one if at all possible.
You don't say.
Shiwu muttered wryly to itself.
So what if I told you Dr. Xicadian had in his possession a sample of the imperial virus, otherwise known as the Queen-activated viral agent?
The technologist just continued to gape at the Zybot wordlessly.
Yes, and furthermore, it just so happens that the Xicadian line of Shimatiri, or those promoted to the position of Queen's physician anyway, have been charged with the ongoing research of the kava for the last several millennia.
But where exactly did the viral sample come from?
Xicilla gasped incredulously.
Surely not from Queen Zitalia herself?
Pure speculation on my own behalf, but given the timeline, I firmly believe it came from none other than her own mother, the great Queen Gianna, I assume during her much-rumoured familial execution. After all, the other Xilektil queens don't call Zitalia Kinslayer for nothing.
The great Queen Gianna?
Xicilla exclaimed in utter disbelief.
And exactly how did you manage to find all this out?
Well, apparently not unlike your good self, I have a level of curiosity that some might describe as less than entirely healthy. In other words, I broke into Dr. Xicadian's supposedly secure database and read something I was not supposed to read.
An expression of perplexed confusion spread across the technologist's face.
So what exactly would lead you to believe that this has anything to do with your creation?
Nothing but very weak circumstantial evidence, if you could even call it that. Nevertheless, it appears that both Xicadian and Zithusula were working on a highly secretive project together, and I strongly suspect that project was directly related to my eventual creation.
Xicilla mulled over the Shybot's words for a brief moment.
That's all well and good, Shiwu, but I'm afraid it still doesn't really answer my question. What ties their alleged research project to the imperial virus, other than the fact that it is in Dr. Xicadian's possession?
Virtually nothing,
the Shybot said flatly.
Remember, Xicilla, you pushed me for a hypothesis, and that is exactly what I'm giving you. Now, if I might be allowed to explain. A prior discussion I had with Zithusula shortly after I discovered the existence of the cover led me to suspect that the scientist is aware of its existence. If I am, in fact, correct, and Zithusula does actually know about the existence of the imperial virus, then I can only conclude that the reason he was made privy to such sensitive information is because it holds some secretive relevance to my creation.
Xicilla remained silent for a very long moment before responding.
All right, Shiwu, I want to thank you very sincerely for being so forthright with me. Rather unfortunately, though, it doesn't change the fact that you are connecting a lot of very distant and quite possibly unrelated dots.
Although perhaps not quite so distant as one might at first be led to believe, the technologist thought to herself with a growing sense of revelation. Xicilla let out a long, slow sigh.
Well, I can't deny the fact that if your hypothesis actually turns out to be correct, then it would provide me with a truly confounding piece of the jigsaw puzzle. A missing piece that up until now anyway has held me completely captive and in the dark.
Shiwu wordlessly extended an open palm.
I don't understand,
Xicilla said, with a genuine look of confusion on her face.
I need to alter your audit logs, as the Queen must never learn that we know about the virus. However, I would very much like to get my finger back first, before you end up losing the damn thing.